Am I the only one here?
Hey, Chuck.
Hey there. How are you doing?
Oh, not bad.
How are things in West Virginia?
Pretty good.
Well, that's good.
Raining today.
Raining. Oh God, we've had our share of rain
Yep.
and lightning. We had a lightning storm. We were without internet for 5 days. You can't believe how much that cripples you. And we were without power. Well, actually, where I am, we lost power for about 5 minutes, but the city of Kilgore lost power, the whole city, for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, that happens around here too.
Yeah, well, lightning hit the main transformer distribution point, whatever it is, and it blew up real good.
Oh yeah.
And it went off again this morning, but we couldn't even open the museum last weekend because no electricity, and all the stuff's really boring without electricity.
What town do you live in, Chuck?
Well, I don't live in any town. I live in a place called Chalk Hill, but where the museum is Kilgore, Texas, East Texas, and we've had some storms like you wouldn't believe.
What museum is that in Texas?
The Texas Broadcast Museum.
Okay.
It's actually pretty good, if I do say so.
I keep intending to get over there sometime soon. I'm just a hop, a skip, and a jump away, and I know it's going to be great. So I'll have to just get on over there.
You need to. And we're also always looking for volunteers that will either fix stuff or be docents or build things. I mean, we got projects, lots of them. Yep. So if you're a hop, skip, and a jump away, then we'll have to get together. We have people who come from Dallas to work on stuff. So
I live in Dallas.
okay, well, I kind of thought you did, and we got a couple volunteers from Dallas that come out, and one of them works on our ESPN truck a lot.
Cool.
We got it making pictures. That's something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had crazy weather in Colorado too. We had a tornado in Denver, and then we had 4 inches of hail on the ground the other day here.
Oh, that's great. Well, somebody was showing off hailstones that were about the size of a grapefruit around here, and all spiked and jaggy. And I know if you need to get your car painted, this is not a good time to do it because all the car repair body shops are real busy taking the dents out.
Yeah.
Might get a pretty good deal on a used car, though. If you don't mind, it looks like, it looks like the surface of a golf ball close up.
Steve, you're muted.
I'm going to mute myself and let somebody else talk.
Hey, Chuck, what cameras are you using in the ESPN truck?
And get this thing unmuted. We have a variety of cameras that are connected to it. It originally had Hitachi cameras. We've just got stuff that's around in the museum that's working, mostly Sony and Panasonic, one Ikegami camera. We've got over 100 TV cameras on display. I keep losing track every time I go to count them. The phone will ring or something, and I get to 92 or something, and I lose it. I did have a kid. I was doing a tour the other day, and there was this kid who I would have guessed was about 16 or 17, but it turned out he was 13. He was some kind of savant of some kind. And I made the comment, said, I don't know how many cameras we have on display, but it's around 100, maybe over that. And he goes, well, there's 56 in this room. I nearly fell over. Because I haven't been able to count that high. I mean, I don't have, once I get finished with fingers and toes, I'm done,
Well, we're not doing very well on attendance tonight. Have no idea what the reason is. But maybe more people will join as we go along.
This time of year, sometimes it's kind of hard to realize that it's 8 o'clock Eastern time because it's hot, sunny, and it just doesn't look like it. I just came screaming in moments ago. I just barely made it and was hoping Zoom would work. It did. Sometimes it doesn't.
Well, Dave, shall we go ahead and get started? I see Larry and I see we've got Matt.
Steve, your audio was kind of muddy a minute ago.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're a little better.
Well, let me get a little closer to the screen. Maybe that'll help. Well, Dave, shall we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, go ahead. Give it a shot.
Well, okay. Welcome to the June meeting of the Early Television Museum community. Start with Dave giving his usual courtesy speech, though I doubt if we really need it now.
Well, just the usual reminder to please keep your microphones muted to keep the aural clutter to a minimum, and you can reopen your mic if you have a comment or need to ask a question. Thanks.
Okay. Well, then let's go right into it. Hold on just a second here. What's going on? All right, there we go. I got it back. Give you the museum. Oh, first, I want to thank the New Jersey Antique Radio Club for sponsoring this meeting and providing the Zoom feed. We really appreciate it. Give a brief summary of the museum's activities. Start with the convention. Pretty successful. We had some minor glitches. We'll make it better next year. Attendance was about the same, but the interesting thing is that quite a few of the people, the usual people who have come to the convention, didn't show up for a variety of reasons. Some of them are getting older and are unable to travel anymore. Some substantial number had commitments of other kinds, weddings and graduations and things like that, and couldn't make it. But on the other side, we had a whole bunch of new people. I think we had 30 people who had never attended a convention before. Among them were a bunch of young people too, which is really nice. I suspect many of them showed up for the auction because we had a fairly large number of pretty decent items. We had 3 sort of high-end items, a couple of mechanical sets, CT100 with a good CRT. The surprising thing to me in the auction was the prices that really some pretty nice late 40s sets went for. They were dirt cheap. I mean, it was a bargain for somebody that was looking for that kind of set. Oh yeah, we also had a new in-box Predicta that sold for $8,000. Surprised me, but people like different things. So anyway, overall, it was pretty successful. We're looking forward to next year. I'll mention that we have a swap meet coming up in October, October 14th. That'll also be the day that we draw the prize winner in the sweepstakes. This year we did a little different. We launched the sweepstakes right after the convention because we really we didn't have the prize ready in time to do it earlier. Talk about that next. It is the prize, for those of you who don't know, is a nice TRK5. It's complete. The cabinet has been very nicely restored, not to pristine condition, but to something it's a nice job, and it maintains a lot of the patina of the original set, which I was pretty pleased with. It has a good CRT. It's completely restorable. We've sold about 35%, we need to sell $8,000 worth of tickets in order to award the prize. We sold about 35% of that. I have no doubt that we will reach the $8,000. This year, we've got the sweepstakes running for a lot longer than we have in the past. October's a long way off, and a lot of people are waiting till later to buy tickets. And we have promotions as we go along where we, include bonus tickets when you buy them, and I think some people wait for that. But anyway, if you're interested in entering, all the proceeds go to the museum. The set was donated to us. We did pay for the restoration, but anything beyond that is, pure profit for the museum. Buy your tickets, you go online, and there's a link right to that'll give information on the set and the sweepstakes, and place where you can buy tickets. We have had one exciting donation to the museum since our last meeting, and that is a Jenkins prismatic disc. And I'll be talking about that, and that'll be the item that I'm featuring this time. It's an interesting gadget. It was donated by the estate of a guy in California who doesn't really want much publicity about it. The executor doesn't want much publicity about it, but we'll be showing it in a few minutes. Membership, we've gained a couple of new people. Not a large increase, but that's typically how it goes. Well, actually, we've gained quite a few. I forgot we haven't had a meeting for 2 months because of the convention. We're up to 171 members, which is higher than last year. Any questions about the museum? Yeah, but let me mention one more thing that we have decided to do. Those of you who have seen the museum, the warehouse is a mess. It's just piled with all kinds of stuff, most of which we want to keep. But it's disorganized and takes up a lot of space. So as part of the weekend when we have the swap meet in October, we're going to be building some shelves along the eastern wall of the warehouse area. 3 shelves 4 feet apart, so the top one will be 12 feet up, and they'll be deep enough to hold TV sets and so forth. So we'll be able to put almost everything that's in the warehouse in our collection of miscellaneous stuff on those shelves. That'll free up an awful lot of space in the museum and the warehouse, make it look a lot nicer. The other thing we're planning on doing is that same weekend is moving the CRTs and other equipment that are stored between the museum display area and the CRT rebuilding room. And we're going to build the one wall that has to be built of the expansion we're going to do. And that will allow us to put in a ceiling, and on top of that, storage space where we can move all those CRTs. That will allow a carpenter to come in and build the new display area, which we hope to have done by the end of the year. Final thing we're going to be doing that weekend is we decided that our pre-war British collection takes up 2 rooms, a small one and a larger one. We're going to consolidate the collection into one room, the larger room, and the smaller room, which is large enough to display probably 8 sets, will be used for a rotating display of sets. And the first one is going to be Predictas that Blake Hinkle is arranging. So we'll probably have a display of Predictas in there for 6 months or so, and then moving on to something else. The new display area we're going to use as we get the comments all the time that the collection's great, but it doesn't have much beyond 1960. So we're going to use that new display area have examples of the technology for each decade through the present day. So we'll take us all the way up to through the flat screen displays, so people can see sets that they can relate to, that they grew up with. Nobody comes to the museum anymore that's seen a pre-war set back before the war. We used to have visitors, but I don't believe we haven't had any in a couple of years from that era. But so anyway, that's our plans for the museum for this fall and winter. So if you have comments about the museum or questions, I'd be glad to answer them now before we move on.
Steve, with the new section, with the later technology, we gonna show video recorders or anything like that too?
I would think so. Yeah, we have a bunch of them that are not on display, and I think that would be a great idea. We have some commercial video equipment in the broadcast equipment room, but we don't have any home stuff on display. So I think that'll be part of the display.
Yeah,
we get quite
happy to help work on that if you want me to, or I'm sure there's others would too.
And that might make a good temporary display too in the small room. So let's talk about that.
We get quite a bit of interest at our museum. We opened a 70s room complete with a quadraphonic stereo and a Betamax and an early VHS machine and an Atari game playing Pong or something, and a few other 1970s kind of things. And we get a lot of response out of that. So, and I noticed that people seem to like the 1970s Harvest Gold TV sets and, avocado green and whatever earth colors there were. They seem to really relate to that because they grew up around it. So I think it's a great idea to do that.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah.
would the museum like a CRT-based high-def television?
Well, we have one already.
Okay,
Probably the answer is no.
okay. We were given one. It's a Panasonic. It's big, it's heavy, and it works.
We have one of those. I don't know if it's Panasonic, but we have one from very early HDTV.
Yeah.
CRT based. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. Are there any people out there that are new that haven't been on a meeting before that would like to introduce themselves?
Yes, I'm Jonathan Allen. I'm a physicist and I work as a volunteer at the New Jersey Antique, at the Sarnoff Museum in New Jersey, the David Sarnoff Museum at the College of New Jersey. And Dave Sika invited me to come here because he asked me to give a presentation at the upcoming September meeting. And so I wanted to come and see just how one of your meetings ran so I'd know how to present my stuff.
Well, welcome. As you'll see, we're really informal. And we've had all kinds of presentations of various kinds and different styles. So we look forward to seeing yours.
It'll be mostly about the Sarnoff Museum and David Sarnoff and some bits about his life, and show a few slides about the exhibits at the museum. In fact, just last Wednesday, I was in there with my camera taking some pictures of relevant stuff, mostly related to TV, obviously, if it's to this gang that I'm giving it.
Okay, great. We look forward to it.
Well, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Jim from Ohio, and I'm just a curious listener. That's it.
Oh, well, welcome, Jim. Anybody else? Well, okay, then let's move on to the Jenkins prismatic disc. I saw Larry is here. So if we could put his camera on, here he is. Larry, your video is, there you go. Okay, great, great. This is an interesting device. This is actually pre-television, though from what I understand, the record isn't clear about if this actually was ever used for television. In 1922, Charles Jenkins started broadcasting still images over wire and over a radio frequency. And his first gadgets were used this prismatic disc. Let me see if I can. Is there any way I can share a screen, Dave, without any trouble? Can I?
Yep.
Okay, let's see what we can do here. Okay, this is the disc, and I wanted to show you what can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. This is dated, let's see, what, 11/1 of 1923, and I think it's disc number 7. I think that's a 7. Because there's one identical to this with the Smithsonian that has a 6 on it. And here is an example. Jenkins made this in, yeah, you can see the number 6 on it. That's the one at the Smithsonian. He made this in different versions with, let me go to another page.
What's wrong with the video feed?
Here's a 3-disc version of it. And here's a 4-disc version of it. Now, going back to the single disc version, the way the thing works is that, well, I could show you on a mobile dish, on the 4-disc model right here. On the transmit end, there was a bright light source that focused on the convergence right here, the center of the 3 discs. Now, as these discs rotate, they're prisms of varying degrees, so that the light beam is bent as the disc rotates, from almost not being bent to being bent a few degrees. And as the disc rotates, you can then, each disc operates only in one plane. So the single disc version, as it rotates, would deflect the beam only horizontally or vertically. So you couldn't do a picture with that. I'm not quite sure what you could use it for. I haven't really understood that. But in the 4-disc versions, they use 2 for vertical and 2 for horizontal. And then on the other side of it is the photocell that generates the signal. And so with these discs rotating, it scans the picture horizontally and vertically, creates an electrical signal that is then sent to the receiving device, which works in the opposite way. with a neon light as the light source, and then the image is projected. The neon image, flat plate image, is projected through the discs again and onto a photographic film, then recorded the image. He used it for still images starting in 1923. So this must have been a very early version of it. Now, at some point, he gave up on the prismatic disc arrangement and went to the Nipkow disc. And all his subsequent experimentation, probably starting about 1924, was with the Nipkow disc. So let me see how I get. I think hold on. Okay, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, great. Let's go back to Larry again. If he could pick up the disc and move it around, see how thick it is and so forth. Now, let's do a side view of it, Larry.
Looks like we may still have Wi-Fi issues at the
Yeah,
museum.
I understand that there's an extender right next to it. Yeah, can you do a side and an edge view of it, Larry? Can you hear us? Well, I guess not, but you can see the gradation as from there we go. Yeah. Okay, that's the Jenkins disc. We're glad to have this. There are only a few of them around. A collector in Canada has a complete system with four discs on it, and the Smithsonian has the single disc version. And I think these are the only ones that are around.
Steve, I don't know if I missed it, but did you say what the discs are made out of?
Glass.
They are glass.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Anyone know more about this than I do?
Looks like we need to find a machinist that could make a copy of all the stuff that holds it up to make it a little more impressive to the casual viewer.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, good luck on that. But every now and then somebody walks in. We got one volunteer who likes to weld.
Right. That's a good idea. I'll explore that. I may know somebody that can do it. Any other questions or comments? Well, let's move on to Matt Patteray is going to make a presentation now about preservation work at Iron Mountain. A lot of you know Matt. He comes to the convention every year. So I will turn it over to Matt, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
But maybe for those who don't know Matt, you can introduce yourself first.
Yeah, good idea.
Sure. Let me see. Am I presenting right now? I don't think.
We're looking at you with
Okay.
a computer behind you.
All right, yeah, and I'll explain that because I'm actually presenting right now from and I'm sitting at the Large Scale Systems Museum in New Kensington, PA, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh, and behind me is a PDP 1170 big and bad PDP 11 mini computer from about 1975. So I felt it would make a pretty nice background, and I'm hoping this all works today because my laptop decided to launch its system disk earlier today. So we'll see how it goes.
Can you do Zoom on a PDP-11?
Not quite. You could do audio editing on it, though. The first DAW was made on a PDP 1170 in 1979 by Dr. Stockhausen of Soundstream, because they were recording for Telarc and they figured, well, if we're doing it digitally anyway, just editing tape and throwing it back to tape doesn't do us any good. So they took an 1170 with a lot of removable disk packs and the max RAM, which was 4 megs, and made a primitive DAW out of it. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Patteray, and I work at Iron Mountain Entertainment Services, which is the entertainment preservation division of Iron Mountain, the larger document storage and retrieval company that you may all know of by seeing their trucks run around, and they do secure shredding and storage and such. And our facility is in Boyers, Pennsylvania, in a disused limestone mine that was originally owned by US Steel and had become their vital records storage center in the 60s after the government said, hey, you better think about storage of your vital records and some continuity of government in case something happens. And then in about 1997, they sold off the facility and Iron Mountain bought it. And the way entertainment services happened is that there was a gentleman, he had worked as a producer, and he ordered from Iron Mountain some tapes, and he thought he would get digital files, but instead a couriered FedEx showed up at his house with all the master tapes that he had requested, and that he didn't know what to do with them. So he approached a couple friends and they got together and said, hey, we could do this, we could preserve stuff, and then they would just provide what the clients needed. So that is what I do for my day job, and I'll get my presentation up here and share my screen and actually go back to the beginning there. See if it actually did. Yep. Share my screen and yep. And 1 second here. All right, so name of the presentation is just Videotape Archiving, Lessons from the Underground. And again, I'm Matt Patteray. So videotape, why is preservation important in the videotape world? Well, a lot of people don't think about it, and videotape just tends to sit about, but there are some problems with it. And the biggest ones are tapes and items do get lost. Tapes are getting damaged. They can get damaged in shipment and storage and such. Tapes are just deteriorating on shelves. If any of you have been involved with audio tape preservation, there is a phenomenon with tape that is known as sticky shed syndrome, where the binder that holds the magnetic particles to the tape has actually, over the years, become hygroscopic, and it will absorb water from the air and then not become inert anymore, and it becomes sticky, and then will shed the magnetic oxide, and with it, whatever material you have on it. Also, with that, like any of this stuff, the equipment to play back videotapes is getting older, and in some cases much harder to find, or at least harder to find in a condition where it hasn't been run through the ringer and is barely functional. So, you know, with what is at risk, and a lot of people don't think about this, but what you need to think of first is actually your early digital stuff that may be on video. So anything that was taken with an early digital camera, be it a card or disc-based camera, early desktop video, which includes not really video presentations like QuickTime or anything as we might know it today, but certain things like flash presentations that were made into moving animations, Dreamweaver, anything like those early multimedia systems. Those have not been really recreated in the current realm. So you have to go back and find a way to export it. And also, anything that you have saved or shared on a website, or especially a sharing platform, you want to think about that, because really all this stuff is really ephemeral and it can be shut down at any time. You know, you don't own it, you know, that content anymore if it's out there. And if, say, YouTube goes away tomorrow because Google decides to shut it down for whatever reason, everything on there is gone. So you want to think about that and what you may have up on your personal pages. But also we have things that, again, in your early digital formats, you want to think about your early consumer tape-based digital formats that a lot of us, or some of us like my age, were getting into when we were, say, in college and such. You have things like Digital 8 video, which is basically, it was Sony's idea to take DV, which they helped create as a consortium, and make it less expensive for the consumer. So they found a way to store the DV bit stream on a 8mm video 8 or high 8 videotape. And them and Hitachi were really the only ones to do that. So that, you know, you want to preserve that, because those tapes are deteriorating and that equipment's going away very fast. DV tapes, a lot of us have shot on DV, whether it was, you know, just as a consumer in the prosumer market, and DV would eventually hit broadcast. DV tapes are now hitting 25 years old, and a lot of them are exhibiting issues with sticky shed and other issues. Unfortunately, Sony seems to have had a problem that wasn't known at the time, but a lot of their metal evaporated tape that was made from the mid 90s onwards, be it high 8 or DV, is really starting to degrade really fast. And if it's not in very good storage conditions, that degradation gets accelerated quite fast. There's also the extension of DV that was HDV, which is high definition in a DV 25 megabit per second bit stream. That is also something you want to look at to preserve anything like that as well. And then if you were in the pro market, and I know some of us were in television, you may remember or may have nightmares about such things as Panasonic's D3 format, which was, they were trying to do what Sony did with D2, which was for the high-end market, a very widely adopted digital format, composite digital format. Panasonic thought they could do the same using a standard, basically a standard VHS type mechanism, which they were good at making, but it wasn't very good for the professional market. The decks did not hold up very well. and it kind of came and went really fast. I believe the only big user in the US, the two big users were National PBS and NBC. And then there was the extension D5, which has both, which is a component format, and it has both an SD and an HD format. And to make it even more confusing, you can use a D3 tape in a D5 machine to record a D5 signal. So if you get a tape, you're not quite sure what you have. And then you also, the original digital format, which was Sony's D1 format from 1986, is also becoming a very needed to be preserved format, because those machines are going away very quickly. They weren't easy to deal with when they were new, and the newest machines are at least 30 years old now, and 30 years on, those have become really a problem to deal with, and they tend to like to eat tapes at the drop of a hat. So you'll want to look at those. And then we get into our consumer and other formats. I know in this crowd, maybe a lot of us had started with EIAJ, half-inch open reel from the 60s, the venerable Sony Portapack. I actually did stuff with EIAJ when I was actually in middle school, and I found a deck and played with it, and that in a Hitachi or a Shibiden VidCon camera. So I had experience with that back when I was like 13 years old. There's also was a strange format that Technicolor and CVC Corporation did, which was a 1/4-inch format. It's a cassette-based format. That one was also not very popular, but it is out there. And also TIAC made it into a semi-professional format with decks that could actually run on 400 hertz power and were used in airplanes for logging things that might have been recorded in airplanes and such. Then you have your 1-inch formats like that are not the standard type C that most broadcast people used, like the earlier Ampex type A format. And IVC also made a format, and it's really a problem because it has interchangeability issues. And it had to the point of, if you were recording it on a machine with really worn heads, you may never play it back because the blanking area was, I believe, at the top of the video, and when the heads became sloppy and the surface became sloppy, you would just lose the sync all at once. And Panasonic almost made a 1-inch format as well. And then so did Sony, made 1-inch format as well. So those you want to preserve. Most people don't think about consumer Betamax anymore, but it is out there. And those machines luckily are still pretty easy to find, and they tend to hold up very well, especially some of the middle of the time machines before Sony was starting to throw in the towel. So if you have some Betamax, you can get some machines from like the 82, 83 area. Like as an example would be an SLHF 300. It has a very robust mechanism, and if you would use one of those to recover your Betamax, and those will play back tapes that were recorded in either hi-fi or standard. Good old 3/4-inch U-matic. A lot of people don't think of it as an old format, but it is over 50 years old and had an extremely long lifespan from the early 70s. And the latest tape I have actually seen at work was from 2003, where someone actually had dubbed DV onto U-matic. to allow it to be distributed. Because it was always the thing that, in that time, you could pretty much send a pneumatic tape to most people in the industry, be it broadcast or music, and they would be able to play it. And then there's good old VHS. A lot of us do have stuff on VHS, whether it's stuff we recorded off the air or personal memories and such with a camcorder and such. And VHS tape is degrading and the machines are no longer being made. So even VHS, as as ubiquitous as it was, is starting to dry up for good decks and such. But another thing to think about is with all these tapes is the metadata. Do you know what you really have on that tape? And this is something I've encountered at work. You'll get tapes with no metadata at all. It's just a tape in a box and there's no label or anything. If you're lucky, it might say something like camera 1 or camera 2. But I've seen tapes where the labels have fallen off and there's nothing else to go by. So you don't know what you have until you put that tape into a machine. There's illegible metadata. Many labels I've seen where someone wrote the label with a felt tip marker 30 years ago, and that felt tip marker is bled or become unlegible. There's wrong metadata. There were tapes that I've dealt with that were miscategorized and considered lost for many years because someone somewhere in a database did a typo and it ended up either naming the tape wrong, the artist wrong, or whatever. And I've seen where both the tape title was wrong, the artist was wrong, and then the label that was put on the tape was also spelled wrong. So if you go search in a database, you're not going to find anything because it's all in there wrong. And we've gotten also the inevitable, someone who was working on 2 tapes at once and mixed up, put the wrong tape back in the wrong box. And we've gotten the call, hey, we pulled this tape and here it is to come get what's on it. Nope, that's not what you think it is. And then, hey, could you pull this, the tape with the other artist on it? And they end up being, the thing that you want to find. So metadata is very important. And in your own preservation of tape, you may know what something is, when you're writing it down, but if you're transferring your own tapes, make a record of what you've got on the tapes and talk about it. And if it's something that you knew specifically about, something that you produced, what you'll want to do is write a little note that goes in, with whatever you're saving, and you can write a little text file or embed the metadata, put in, who's in it, what time it was, where it was shot, all that kind of stuff, because that is history and it all does need to be preserved. And, these could be your own personal tapes, but like I said, those of us who are in broadcast or have been in broadcast, we might have recorded things that we did, a show that we did, and it might be the only copy that's ever out there because, if it was at a TV station, were they rolling tape at the time? Might not have been. Did it just go out, or were the tapes erased? And some of this stuff, people are looking for this kind of stuff now. So it is a great thing to try to preserve now. And going back to actually the preserving, we primarily work in a Mac-based environment, and I've been a Mac user for years. So my suggestions are going to be Mac based, but if you've got any questions, I can, help you with. If anyone wants to, contact me, they can, and ask about options for Windows as well. But one of your best things to get if you're going to be doing preservation of early digital and even some analog video is to get an older Mac that can run Mac OS 10.13, which is High Sierra, and give, and a lot of these machines can be got for really not a lot of money anymore. And a good Mac Pro they can run 1013 will still be quite usable for this and can easily handle video. But also if you're migrating over stuff that's on discs or cards or even DVDs and such, an older Mac with 1013 can still read FAT16, which is MS-DOS, FAT32, Windows, and NTFS, but on a Mac, they're all read-only. It can also read HFS and HFS plus formatted discs, which were the Mac formats from the mid-90s, from the early 90s on. And then it can also read and write an exFAT disk or an AFS disk, which is Apple's current file system, so that you can migrate it over to newer disks and newer machines. For converting formats, say you have stuff that you did and you saved it as an early QuickTime file and you want to keep it. Current QuickTime more than likely will not read old files that are like 10 or plus years old. It doesn't have all the codecs in it. So we would go program like there's a CSoft video converter, and that can convert from, and it's about 100 different formats to and from. So you could even get stuff like early Windows media file, which is a hard format to read. Current Windows media player doesn't deal well with it. So you can convert them to newer formats. On the older Macs, you can there's free editing software such as DaVinci Resolve that you can use to edit and save your videos and convert them to different formats and convert them to a current format such as 422 ProRes HQ, which is one of the most common professional formats. That software is free. DaVinci Resolve, if you get the basic version, is always free. It's fairly easy to use. And if you have used other digital video editing software, you can actually set it up so it'll use the same keys as Avid or Premiere or Final Cut. And it's quite stable and it's quite useful, and it runs well on the older machines. If you've got a newer machine, you can of course install the newer versions, and you get pretty much all the editing that you could ever want. The only things you really can't do in the free version is special things like upresing, but that you could go with the newer version and pay to do if you wanted to upres anything from say SD to HD. And with your YouTube videos and such, you would want to, you could get something like 4K video downloader, which then will save your videos as an MP4, and then you can convert them. But it'll save them in whatever the highest quality you ever had them on YouTube, which I know for some of us that did early stuff, the only thing you're going to have there's 360p or 480p if you're lucky. Now, with analog's kind of a digital, different beast. Again, a lot of the earlier tapes are starting to show signs of sticky shed syndrome. Mixing my words here. And they must be dehydrated before playback. And a lot of people call it baking, but I like to use the term dehydrating because, it's really what you're doing. You're taking the tape, you're putting it in a low oven at about 130 degrees for about 8 to 12 hours. Some need it longer. And it will temporarily make it playable again. It does not reverse sticky shed, and sticky shed will continue, and it will continue to then pull the moisture from the air, and they will go sticky again, but temporarily, and how long they're playable depends on your conditions you're in and the tape. So if you've got that and you're doing it, thicker tapes would need a longer time. So you're going to bake something as a 1-inch tape longer than you would a 1/2-inch tape. And pretty much all EIAJ tape at this point needs to be baked, hands down. It just needs to be done. And even for 1-inch, if you're preserving even C format tape, Ampex tape tends to be pretty sticky, and even 479 Scotch is becoming sticky shed. And so you might want to think about baking that just before you run it at all. And with that, if you're dehydrating a cassette-based format, you'll want to prop the cassette flap open to allow the air to go and circulate around on the tapes. And the good thing about this is you don't need anything very special to do this. Yes, you can get laboratory ovens and very expensive things, but you don't need anything like that. An American Harvest food dehydrator that some of us may have, or you find at a garage sale, can be used, because what you just need is the low temperature and forced warm air convection to move that air around and take that moisture away. And so you can get, even if you're getting a new one, those dehydrators sell for about $150 or less. And mold, well, that's a whole different discussion, because there's all kinds of mold that can take host on tapes, and that can take a whole different presentation. And there's people that specialize in the industry in nothing but remediating mold. And if there is mold, if you're lucky and it's an open reel format, you can be very slow and methodical and do everything in a very open environment and slowly wind the tape. And if you can remove a flange, then if you go over the tape with a cloth basically soaked in some isopropyl, that will take care of some of the mold. But you want to be very careful, and there are articles about how to do that. And again, with tape baking, there are articles on it about there, and we'll see if I can share this one. The one that a lot of people know was posted on Wendy Carlos's website, and it's called, if you were coming, if you knew you were coming, you knew to bake the tape. And it goes into how, she learned about tape baking when restoring the soundtrack tapes for Tron. And, but you can go there. Let me get back to the presentation here. And then, we'll talk a little bit about some of the equipment that you need other than VCR. You will need a nice VCR that is, properly serviced, and, or at least somewhat functioning properly to be able to recover your tapes. One of the things that I recommend is a good time-based corrector, and one of the best out there that's an older one and you can still find it at a reasonable price is the Latcher Harris DPS 475. And that model can actually take in composite video, S-video, component video, and it does the stabilization, decides if it's even needed, because it can run in just digitized mode. But if it detects that there's enough slop in the sink, it will switch over into time-based correction mode, and it translates it into SDI, the professional broadcast standard. And it can also take either unbalanced or balanced video. So audio. So you don't have to worry about getting a converter if you're running a consumer VCR with unbalanced audio. And has many options, like if you do have something with bars on the tape and hoping that the bars on the tape actually have something to do with the content on the tape, which is not always the case, but it can actually, it will set its levels based on the bars on the tape, kind of eliminating some of what the VCR does to the colors when it was recorded. Along with that, you need a way to get SDI into your machine. And one of the best ways is actually a Blackmagic design, just Blackmagic DeckLink card, which is a PCIe card so that it will run under Windows, Linux, or Mac. And it's about $150 new, but on the used market, you can find them for about $50. And with that, it takes in SDI and it runs their own capture software, which is free. And also Blackmagic's tech support is free, and it's kind of forum based, but it's very nice tech support. And on those cards, if you have a more professional video recorder, it actually does have an RS-422 output on DB9 so that you can actually control the deck, and it can actually do captures of time code if you have that. If not, it doesn't matter, but if your VCR does support that, it can use it. And that, again, is a great option for getting SDI into your machine. And that's all it does is SDI. It will not do anything else. But if you're using the time-based corrector, that is a great pairing. I do recommend a high-quality analog monitor for monitoring your video. You know, Sony Trinitron or something like that, or a nice Ikegami if you've got one. They will show things that a digital monitor can't or doesn't, or a digital monitor can't deal with. Like a digital monitor can't deal with bad sync very well. And if you have really bad sync and you can't see anything, but an analog monitor will show that. And I just always recommend, if you could get a cheap SMPTE bar generator, hook that in to the video in of your machine so you can check and make sure that it's passing proper video in EDE mode. And also, pardon me, and with that, you can also do the set to bars if you're using the Harris TBC, and then that will then let you eliminate, take out some of the things that your VCR may be doing to the video, because even the consumer ones, not everything they pass through. Some pass through video quite well and don't destroy it too bad on the way through, but some don't do a great job. And that's a good way to kind of eliminate its issues. Pardon me. And now, when you're recovering DV and Digital 8, those are kind of going to be different cats, so to speak, because DV was kind of the Wild West in video terms, because there were so many different formats that all used that same 1/4-inch tape. But if you have something like DV or Sony's DV Cam, you have mini DV, and even just standard DVC Pro, which was Panasonic's format, the Sony DSR 1800A or the 1600A, which is a player, is a great deck. Some can still be found with low hours, and they do handle tape very well. They also have a couple nice features where if you put in a tape that is not 525 lines, say you have some tapes that were shot over in Europe and they're 625 line, it won't play it, but it'll tell you that it's a 625 line tape. And there are 625 line versions of those machines. They're just 1800 AP and 1600 AP. But if you were in the Panasonic ecosystem, your Panasonic, the model is an AJ HD 1400, and that will play just about everything that's on the larger tapes and the medium and large tapes. It'll do DV Cam, it'll do DVC Pro 25, DVC Pro 50, or DVC Pro HD. The one disadvantage of all the Panasonic decks is they do require a mini to medium adapter to play the mini DV size tapes, be they mini DV, DV cam, or HDV. And those adapters are kind of finicky and hard to come by now. They tend to sell for sometimes almost as much as the VCRs do. But those are a good option for that deck, and they have both an HD SDI and an SD output on them. For Digital 8, there's really not a whole lot out there. You can try to get a Digital 8 camcorder, but a lot of those have been used to death, and they are very hard to work on because everything's really compacted in there, and parts are just generally not available for Digital 8 cameras if you get one that's got bad heads or something like that. But Sony did make a Digital 8 Walkman, the DVD 200, and it can play Digital 8 tapes, and it will also play Video 8 and High 8, and it has a digital time-based corrector and a digital noise reduction for that usage when you're playing analog tapes. Now, it does only have two outputs, and that's either DV or analog, being composite and S-video. So you would need to run it through either a leech, or you can actually run it through, if you have a machine with FireWire, such as the aforementioned Max, you can run a system called DV Rescue, and that can record. Or if you're really getting into it and you have a lot, you can go get what's called a Miranda DV bridge, which does to and from DV to SD. And if you're lucky and you find a leech with a DV option, that can be used as well, but those are somewhat rare. It was an option that could be added on, and it was a board. It was actually made for them. It's all Sony chips, and it just goes in and plugs into the standard machine, but it does allow you to use a DV stream and also control the deck from the TBC. And then again, you would, if you had the Miranda or the leech, you would need a Blackmagic deck link. Now, if you do have FireWire, and a lot of people don't know this, but actually you can capture a DV stream directly in current QuickTime if you've got a FireWire connection. And that can be either on an older Mac directly through FireWire, or Apple sells adapters that can adapt the current Thunderbolt. You can go Thunderbolt to Thunderbolt 2, and then Thunderbolt 2 to FireWire. And then you can, that does work. That cacophony adapters will work to control a DV deck and then capture the FireWire. And then there is a program out there which is open source and is actually quite nice. It's takes a little setup and can be a little finicky at times, but when it does work, it works quite well. It's called DV Rescue. It is not real time. What it is a software suite that can capture the DV stream, and it'll detect errors and dropouts, or when the concealment is high on the tape. And what it does is it'll go and try to recapture the same section, and then you can have it capture 2, 3, 4 times, and then it will take all these captures and merge them into one to help to recover any lost data. And it does a fairly good job, but it is not at all real time. So the captures can take, like 6 to 8 hours, but are completely automated, and then rendering the file out back to, say, a ProRes file does require a pretty processor. It's pretty processor intensive. So it would need a pretty hefty Mac to, be able to keep anything close to real time. So you might be looking at 6, 8, 12, 24 hours to render out a file. But if you know, you're not worried about time and you're not under time crunches. It is a nice system. And there's a large community developing around it. A large community of archivists are using DV Rescue, and it's getting better and better all the time for helping with these problematic DV tapes. That was, you know, it's a very nice system. Now we're going to try something here, and I hope this works, and you guys can let me know if you actually can see this on the other end. And if you don't see the YouTubes come up, please let me know. It may not let me do this, but I'll try. So I've got a couple examples here of video that has been recovered. The first was a tape that was originally 2-inch quad, then it was dubbed down to 3/4 inch. Then the director took it home, and then later on he dubbed it from 3/4 inch to M2, which again was a Panasonic Me Too format. They tried to be Sony and make something that was equivalent to Betacam SP. Wasn't all that successful. It was used a bit, but it has become quite problematic over the years because they tended to use really thin tape in the tapes, and the machines were very complicated because of that thin tape, and they have not aged well. But I was able to get that dub recovered. The second is also an M2 recording, but it was a direct recording from a NASA satellite feed, C-band satellite feed back in the 80s. And then the third one is an HD cam recording that I recovered. Now, this was actually something I did for work, and one of the few things I can actually talk about because it's actually been released. And it was originally shot on HD cam back in 2008 as a 1080 PSF, or progressive segmented frame, 29.98 master. The color correction was then done to the tape after we captured it. And then it was a 4K upres was done by the label, which was Sony Music Entertainment. And what they did was use it to replace an original recording of the video, which was a 360p YouTube video that was posted back in 2008. I'm going to go to the first one here, and we'll see if it goes. Maybe.
Matt, this is Dave Abramson.
Yes, sir.
Am I online here?
Yes, I can hear you, Dave.
All right, I'm very much like you into restoration on a very much lower level than you know, with whatever I've accumulated over my years of broadcasting. And, you know, one of my favorites is the Sony 3/4 inch BBU 950, which was probably the greatest machine ever made.
Yes,
and
we love them.
In my case, it has the built-in time-based corrector. I have the outboard time-based adjustment. And I also have a repair expert here in Philadelphia, who I'm not going to put out here on the internet, but if you want to contact me, I will give you his name. He's just done a little rework on my machine, and it is spectacular. That thing is just amazing just to salvage.
They are an amazing deck. I really do. We tend to use 950s and 920s at work when we can get them in good condition. They just really do handle 3/4 inch quite well, and that time-based corrector does a great job. It even does a good job in recovering those fun tapes from AGFA that like to self-erase.
No, and you know, it's so much better than any of the 5800 series machines. There's no comparison between the two.
And well, we also use an 800 at times, because there's sometimes that 800 will pull a tape that'll pull video off a tape that nothing else will. There was just something about those 800s, and we have a BVT 810 with it, and it's a heck of a setup there. Again, recovering. I hate Ampex tape. I hate Ampex tape with a passion. And AGFA tape, thankfully, not many people used it, but it's horrendous because it self-erases along with sticky shed. And thank God no one seemed to really ever use it for 1630 tapes, which was the digital audio on 3/4 inch. And that would just be even more horrendous.
Well, as a little 3/4 inch story, I worked for the Phillies running the instant replay screen, and we used an 800 for instant replay back in 1984 because you could slow-mo the thing.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was unheard of in baseball.
No, we have, the 800 was a nice machine, and and then they added dynamic tracking to it, and then it became even better. And that's why, like, for recovery for 1 inch, nothing can beat I just like a BVH 2000. I think a BVH 2000 is a great deck.
Yep.
It handles tape well. The external, the BVT 2000s, it makes a great combo. I personally detest the 3000 series because if I get one in, I'm going to be working on it for 40 hours replacing capacitors before I do anything else, and hoping they haven't peed all over the board and eaten through those 6-layer boards. They do some nice things when they work, but they're just so full of bad capacitors. And there's another fun thing that's waiting for them, and that's that the scanner bracket is made out of pot metal. And that's starting to do what pot metal does. Yeah. Well, it either does that or it expands and jams the scanner. So.
Well, after beating 3/4 inch to death, I want to move to VHS.
Mhm.
And here at home, I have a JVC machine that has a built-in time-based corrector. And I think JVC had a few of them.
Yes,
and I'm not sure about others, but I have played tapes on this thing that just, this machine is miraculous, resurrecting not only time-based errors, but chroma errors. I've got some old VHS tapes where the color is just all sparkly and nasty, and you play through this thing and it's smooth. It's wonderful. Am I alone?
No, those JVCs, they're pretty nice machines, and what they can be pretty nice. And we actually use a couple of the older ones. The only problem with the really older ones is you have to get the 7-pin to 4-pin adapters, because they on those ones use that 7-pin connector that's like a dub connector, and it's still YC, but it's different. And those old ones JVC machines handle VHS tape quite well. I'm not a fan again of Panasonics.
I'm just speaking as an amateur guy here at home, trying to save a few tapes, not anything, museum quality.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Matt, excuse me, were you going to show us some YouTube samples?
It's not letting me share.
Oh,
the browsers are arguing with Zoom, so I'm actually putting the links into the chat. So I have a feeling this might happen because.
Yeah. Did you try making the YouTube your active window and then sharing?
Yeah, and it didn't.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay.
Welcome to Zoom.
Zoom's
Yeah.
going to be Zoom.
Yeah.
You
Was
know,
was that the end of your presentation?
yeah,
or
that
you-
was just to show the
Yeah.
just to show those three in there, and I've just popped the three links
Okay.
into there, so you guys can kind of watch them on your own time. The second one is a bit long because it is a NASA video, and it's about 30 minutes long. It was a bit of found footage because I was, transferring an M2 tape, and there was the portion that the customer had wanted me to do, and then I left it play, and then there was this NASA footage, which I thought was pretty cool. Just like M2, don't really like M2. I know a couple people had it, but it wasn't a fun format, and now it isn't a fun format to be with. And I personally don't recommend getting, if you're getting into this, any Panasonic decks, because any Panasonic decks that you would get for VHS that are semi-pro are going to be from the 90s, and they're so full of bad surface mount capacitors. You're going to be replacing surface mount capacitors, hundreds of them, and it's really not fun. But yeah, so that was kind of where I stand. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be here, and you can shoot me some stuff in the chat, and I'll put my email address in the chat as well. So if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to use me as a resource. I said the same thing to Mia, feel free to email me. It's what I'm here for. I love doing this.
All right. Well, thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. I always love talking to you about this stuff. You're only about 100 times more knowledgeable than I am. I'm gonna just jump in for a second here, and I see that a guy named Bill Seary is listed in the participants log. And if I'm not putting you on the spot too much, Bill, I have not met you in real life, but I know of your work. Would you be willing to jump in if you had any thoughts on the subject? We'd love to hear from you.
You caught me.
Ha!
Matt did really well. I don't know what I can add to it. I differ on a few minor points, but they're minor. It's just how you do things. Everybody, there are 10 different ways to do the same thing. But no, I'm always happy to hear Matt talk, and great job.
Oh, thank you very much, Bill. I do appreciate that. And I think a lot of us have seen your work, and we all very much appreciate and see what you have done. And I've been amazed at some of the things you have done as well that I have seen. And it's been some great quad and 1-inch recovery that I've seen.
Yeah. Well, you got to see the EIHA. That's what I'm most proud of. I have the most fun with that. I have a question for you, though. I know you've been collecting stuff for a long time, and you do the old VTRs list. And is it your stuff that went to Iron Mountain and you're working on, or is it's just a job?
So it's kind of both. So I've been collecting enough equipment that there have been times that we've been sent in stuff from customers and clients, and I've gone, I have that deck, and I'll throw it in the car and take it down to the mountain. And our lead audio engineer has gone a couple times. He's like, really? You have one of those? Really? And yeah, I've had it, and sometimes I've had them for years. So I did do stuff myself independently, and I still do that a little bit. But for 40 hours a week, it's down in the underground doing for clients. And we do everything from Hollywood and the big music labels to institutions, universities and such. And so we kind of do it all. but it's a labor of love. I think all of us that are in the preservation groups and such, just, it's becomes a thing you love. And when I was at EMEA in Pittsburgh, earlier in December, I was actually surprised because my impression from the EMEA people that they were primarily film based. And then when I was in a room with about 200 people and I asked, how many of you are actually doing video work? About 75% raised their hand and said they were doing video work. And it was pretty heartening to see. It was great to see. And there were a lot of young people who showed a lot of interest. So spreading the information, I just felt happy to be able to do that and get a lot of young people interested. And we're doing the same thing at work. I'm training a young engineer right now who's 23. And before he started working with us, the only tape-based format he had ever used was DV, because the cameras were cheap when he was in college and they could get them for $100 and destroy them and not worry about it.
Was that your first EMEA?
That was my first EMEA, and they had me and our audio guy, Matt Steck, and we followed Rick Seebeck, who is a Pittsburgh legend. And it was a little unnerving to follow someone like that and then be followed by someone who's talking about, restoring Orson Welles' Chimes at Midnight. But it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
Matt, I'm the co-chair of the Audio Engineering Society Historical Committee, and we just finished a seminar at Library of Congress, Culpeper. Have you ever been over there?
I have never been over there, but we did send some people over there. I didn't get to go, but we had a couple people there. I think Mark and a couple other of our people were over there, and I know there were a couple of biggies from Universal Music were there too, making some presentations as well.
They have quite a video transfer facility over there. I don't know if it's as big as yours, but it's pretty neat.
Ours isn't as big as people think it is, and because right now we're one of the smaller ones because we're constrained by the mine and how much room we can get in carved out spaces. So really, for all we do, there's 3 video engineers. So we keep running pretty good. They keep us running pretty busy. Oh yeah, and we're the ones who also maintain the gear as well. Well, we don't have dedicated techs at our facility. But that's why I use, you'll see me pop up on the old VTRs list and places like that, which, the old VTRs list, if you guys don't know, it's old VTRs groups.io. It's a great resource. And it was started back, it's over 20 years old now. And it originally was a Yahoo group, and we migrated it over to groups.io, and we're able to preserve all those 20 years of conversations. And there's a lot of tech info in there. There's a lot because there were a lot of crossovers from the Ampex list over to our list as well. I've talked for quite a while here, but does anyone else have any other questions?
Matt, Ed Melbourne here. What is your customer's favorite final format, physical format?
Favorite file format depends on the customer and what they tend to do with it afterwards in their workflows. But I will say the most common one is 422 ProRes HQ is our most common format that we send stuff to people in. And then depending on the customer, some of them will also give them a H.264 MP4 just as a viewable file that you can, just share amongst people. It's not high quality at all, but it's a good thing, to throw into PowerPoint or something like that. But then we
Yeah.
do have a couple customers who request everything is 10-bit uncompressed YUV. And when you're doing that in HD, that's why the data people hate the video people, because I'm sending 2 TB files and using up all of our bandwidth, because uncompressed HD at 1080p is 1.34 gigabits per second of bandwidth. So it does eat up hard drive space pretty fast.
So what do these customers store this content on usually?
They have their own cloud services that they have done. Their secure cloud services that they usually own, and or at least they manage, and then other companies do the back end. And then they will usually, we also will send them backups of what we've done on LTO tape, once or twice a year for video. And we send things, we're using LTO 7 or 8 right now because it gives you, a couple of terabytes on the tape. But that's just backup. But we just, they send us a link to their secure server. We log in and just upload it through, there's a service called IBM Aspera, which is a secure end-to-end connection that will allow the transfers over the internet. No one uses things like, at one time, years ago, everyone used, file sharing services, but those are very unsecure. So they do secure links between machines now.
Thank you.
Nice.
People who are
I'll just ask you one more thing. How's that M deck coming?
Oh, the M deck. Well, it's being Panasonic, I'll tell you that. And it's right now having just about every capacitor inside of it replaced, just to get the power supply stable enough to run. And because I don't want to deal with leaky capacitors again, I'm not doing it, but it's actually our facility in New Jersey. They're actually working on it right now. And I'm having them use aluminum organic polymer capacitors because they aren't going to leak because there's a solid electrolyte and they don't vent out when they overheat. And so they have, a lot of advantages to them, and they've come down in price enough to be usable. A friend of mine had turned me on to them a couple of years ago to use in some of the stuff that we do here, vintage computers, which also suffer from bad capacitors. But that M deck, it's kind of trying to make a picture right now. So we're starting to get it to behave. I think there's a couple bad, in fact, quite a lot of bad early CMOS chips in it. Nice CD4000 series chips that have popped in it too.
Well, if you get stuck, we got 2 working ones here. So
Yeah, we might. Well, unfortunately, this client, they won't let the tapes out of the area. They've said we can't even send them to other of our facilities. They need to stay in our facility, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, but if you have a manual, I might be hitting you up for some scans on a manual though, because we have some bits that are unreadable.
Okay.
And I appreciate it, Bill. I do. I think if anyone else doesn't have any questions, I'll hand it back on over to Steve there. I thank you all.
Somebody wake up Steve.
Looks like we may have lost Steve. Oh, there he is.
I see him. Hello,
Microphone
Steve.
is missing.
There you
Steve,
go.
Steve, your audio's cutting in and out.
Okay, I don't understand that. Anyway, let's open it up for general discussion. Anybody have a topic they want to bring up? Any questions they want to ask? Now's the time to do it.
I arrived really late, so I went over to YouTube so I could see the prismatic disc. And I want to apologize to Matt because I completely missed his presentation. I'll have to look at it on YouTube. But the reason I wanted to see the disc is because I remembered something similar from the Henry Ford Museum. And I went back and looked at my pictures, and they had a prismatic ring rather than a disc. And I wonder if you've seen such a thing.
Well, that's what we have. We have the single ring, a disc. They're called both things. That's what was just donated to the museum.
This is not a disc. It's it's actually like a band of glass instead of a plate.
Really? No, I've never seen that.
If I can share my screen, I think I can show it.
Please do.
Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty neat.
And I'm not sure if it's another Jenkins thing or somebody else's. But it's in the case with other things that I think are Jenkins. So I'm had it in my head anyway that this is another Jenkins invention.
You know, I think it probably is, though I have never seen anything in any of the stuff I've seen about Jenkins. I've never seen that. I will do further research. Is that on display there now?
I no, as far as I know, they took out all the antique TV section, and in fact, several years back, somebody contacted me to share my photos because they had disassociated the signs and the artifacts, and they wanted to try to put them back together again.
Huh.
Steve, is there a 1 minute description of how the prismatic disc works versus a nip count? I've never heard it.
Yeah, the disc is made out of glass, and the thickness of the glass varies. And it's a prism, and as it rotates, different parts of the disc have different amounts of prism effect, bending the light. So when you scan, you can scan, for instance, a line with it. You can scan horizontally, and it'll project from a image that's projected into it. It will essentially scan horizontally into a photocell. You could use it the other direction for the horizontal plane. So you notice that they have a single disc system, or he had a single disc system that I can't figure out how it works. I'm still trying to figure that out. But with the 2, 3, and 4 disc systems, the way it worked is that one or more of them did the horizontal scanning, and one or more of them did the vertical scanning, depending upon the design.
So it sounds kind of like the mirror systems.
Well, I guess, and that it's made out of glass, but it's basically using the prismatic effect to bend the light beam from the source and project it into a photocell on the transmitting end, so that you get one pixel at a time projected onto the photocell.
Thank you much.
The image that you have of the single disc with some film and a crank, I suspect what was going on there was that the single disc was making a horizontal scan, and the motion of the film vertically was making the vertical scan.
I thought so too, but in looking at the mechanism, it doesn't look like the film is connected to the crank, the film transport. Now maybe there's just pieces missing from it. Maybe there was a belt or something that's missing. But that's what I thought too. And then I thought, I'm not sure how that would work. Wouldn't you need, rather than in order for that to work, wouldn't you need a horizontal slot essentially on the film source, so that only one section of that, as the film moved through, the slot would be in front of one section of the image. If I'm making any sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. But if you picture the optics working in reverse, where there's a spot of light that goes through the disc first to get a horizontal line, and then at the same time the film is moving vertically, then you wouldn't need a slot.
I see what you're saying. Let me think that through and look at the back. I have some other pictures of that same mechanism. So I will take a look at them. I'll put them on my site. I just found them a little while ago. I have 2 other photographs of that same device from different angles that might help shed some light on it. Well, I'm going to go get something to eat. I'm starving, and it's 2 hours earlier out here, so it's I haven't eaten yet tonight, so I'll leave it to the rest of you. Keep talking as long as you want, and hope we see you next month.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. See you.
As I said, I came in late, so I don't know if anybody mentioned, but Jenkins was the founder of the Society of Motion Picture Engineers, now known as SMPTE, Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers.
Early video. No, just for a laugh here, I've gotten into early CED video players and discs. What a rabbit hole that thing is. And what a wonderful view of how RCA went south backing this thing up. They, I've got them working. It's just a fun thing. There's no historical anything going on here. It's just fun to play with. Needle vision, as somebody called it. So that's it.
If you come to the September meeting, Jonathan will probably talk about that from the Sarnoff display. They have a big sign down there, if you've ever seen the place or been to it, something to the effect of, how RCA managed to lose $500 million.
600 million was the number I remember. But, this thing is 1981, so that puts it, 40 years ago. And the stupid things are still kind of working. But the idea of a needle on a vinyl platter playing video is just bizarre. And they did it. They didn't do it well, but they did it.
Well, Baird did it too.
Or what was that other thing? Phone vision or something like that?
The first video disc that I saw was from Teldec, and it was actually a mechanical groove rather than a capacitive pickup. It used a piezo crystal, and the bumps in the plastic record could be made small enough and the edge of the crystal sharp enough that they could get about 2 megahertz bandwidth out of the thing. It wasn't clear whether it ever could be improved enough to carry color, but that was actually one of the earliest attempts at making a video disc.
It's amazing. The idea was great. I think the idea was great. That it works today. Anybody that can get these things, dumb things to play, is a miracle, given the age and degradation. It's just fun. That's it. It's just fun. There's nothing historic going on here. That's it. Good night.
All right, I gotta run. I can leave it on, or we can call an end to the meeting. I guess we're winding down, but all right. Good night, all.